right, so our first reading will be Todd here, and he's a new guy in town. He was for many years an engineer for a automobile company, and he's lived in LA for a long time. He knew a lot of writers in LA. He had a friend there who just put out another book by Bukowski, another collection of notes of a dirty old man, you know, that column Bukowski had in the underground paper Open City. So now Todd has moved here and trying a new life and doing a lot of writing. He's applied to go to the workshop, and he's gonna go in with another guy on a new press here to put out different kind of books. And he's got this one book by himself already out, and it's a pretty good book. I've read it. Now, what's it called?
The Judge T. Chronicles.
The Judge T. Chronicles. And it's about a kind of weird, interesting guy he knew on the West Coast who was sort of like an older figure in his life. And the guy had a lot of things to say, but it turned out he was also a Vietnam vet and also kind of an alkie, and all in all, a weird, interesting guy. So Todd wrote this book trying to portray the guy and their relationship and how it went, and it's pretty good. All right, so where did you grow up?
I was born in Story City, Iowa, and I've moved around since then.
Oh, great. An actual Iowa person. So, okay. And if you want to buy one of his books, I'm sure he'll sell you one.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, Chuck. I think it's interesting that I'm here because I don't like to call myself a poet. I think that I'm a writer, and then when these pieces come out small, then I have to call them poems. And like Chuck said, in Los Angeles, I ran into a lot of, I guess they were outlaw poets while I was trying to write my first book, and I thought I would read one that came out from knowing those guys. I just put together a website, so I'm just going to read from that. This first one's called Nuts by Isaac Zach Edwards, which was my pen name. I redefined poetry for myself recently. I realized it doesn't have to be vague. It can reach out and grab you by the nuts or whatever you've got down there, and it can tell you exactly what it means. On the website, there's a link that's called Learn the Sad Story of How I Began Writing Poetry. I still won't claim to be a P word. The Sad Story of How I Began Writing Poetry by Todd Jackson. I'd published my first novel, flown free from my mentors and industry, but sidewalk book sales didn't pay the bills, and unemployment was long gone. So when they called, I went back to the cubicles. 3 weeks later, my writing mentor, John Thomas, died from a failed heart in a jail cell in Santa Monica. 3 months later, his voice still loud as the editor in the back of my head, I snapped my Achilles tendon. The rupture didn't hurt. It was just weird to feel the consistency of yogurt where that tendon was supposed to be. The recovery, 10 weeks in a cast, and months of physical therapy were bleeping awful. To make it even worse, on the day I was released from the cast, my work mentor, the other John, was found dead in his hotel room. It messed me up. I couldn't make whole sentences. I was too beaten to worry about punctuation or, anything other than just trying to figure it out, capture this giant, ugly chunk of life that had smacked me in the face. Those few months in the long, often dark parade of seasons I've lived would eventually prove my optimism could never be spoiled by reality and vice versa. But I didn't know that at the time. At the time, I began writing in a notebook, not even filling the width of pages. I tried to call the writing short pieces, but they looked like poems. I made up my own term, prosatry. Prose mixed with poetry are part prose and part try. But I eventually admitted, on top of all my other flaws, and wish I wasn't, I write poetry. As Chuck said, I used to be an engineer, and this story happened during the first layoff that I ever had. I've since had 5 more, which makes me not want to be an engineer. Volume 11, Up the Stairs. You were the best I ever saw. Not anymore, Judge. Now I'm just happy if someone gives me $10 for a book. We're in his hotel room. The dirty plastic glasses are half filled with J&B. He's on the bed, waxing nostalgic about the days we used to work together. I had to cut him off. I don't want to think about the capitalistic, addictive person I once was, smoking weed to forget my job immediately upon leaving, and drinking when that didn't work. He's lapsed onto an elbow. One of his legs is bent in front of him. The other's toes are resting on the floor. I had to carry him up the stairs. He wouldn't take the elevator. The doc says it's good for my knees. I know he doesn't want to be seen by the people at the front desk in this condition. He's staring at me. What are you looking at? I yell and leap from my chair, making like I'm going to bust his head open with my piece of shit whiskey glass. He doesn't flinch. Instead, he raises his drink. To the best damn engineer I ever saw. For some reason, there is nothing more insulting he could say to me this evening. I fake a sip. The last one almost came up, and lecture him while I'm still standing. I've told you before, just because you're good at something doesn't mean you have to do it. For instance, you have a grand ability to drink, but what's that going to do for you in the end? I typically wouldn't bring it up, but he is loaded, and he lives on the 3rd fucking floor. I can still feel his hand clenching my shoulder as I hauled all 250 pounds of his useless ass up the hotel's back stairs. He doesn't talk when you mention drinking. He drinks. Yeah, I pissed him off. So what? You didn't see me bringing up Nam or his ex-wife, did you? That last job nearly undid me. Towards the end, I had an epiphany. What I did every day did not make me proud. Once I quit, I discovered it never had. I walked away from the career rising in front of me like a spiral staircase and refused to look back, even at him. The judge is crying. It's quiet, no whimpering, no pestering tears, just the release of internal floods. He's lost inside of himself, and I don't want to go there tonight, even if it's my fault. I slam my drink. I'm out of here. And I leave. Down the stairs, to my car. Don't worry about me. I'll be fine. I'm the best engineer he's ever seen, and I know the way home, drunk or sober. It used to be my commute. So one of the things I do now is raise children. I have 2 daughters, 8 and 4, and I work at the 4-year-old's preschool. So I've gone from being yelled at and shoved by UAW automotive workers to being yelled at and shoved by 4-year-olds and 3-year-olds. They both have their moments. So I thought I'd read one about the girls. It's called When the Kids Go to Bed Peacefully. The books have been read, the teeth are all brushed, as is the hair. The lights, aside from the Tinkerbell nightlight, are out. I have not tucked in the little one. I don't wipe the blankets. And I'm almost done rubbing the big one's back to help her go to sleep. I kiss the back of her head, and she spins, blatantly not sleeping. As she lifts her arms to give me one last gigantic hug to end the day, she tells me, "You're the best daddy in the whole world." And with her, them, as evidence, she may be right. This is one I wrote years ago, but it constantly seems to be appropriate for me. It's happened again. I see myself standing, brows furrowed, mouth agape, arms extended, fingers bent like claws. I'm in front of my life, and it's a 3-foot ball of string with loose ends everywhere. The whole mess is spinning wildly, so the ends look like a force field humming around this ugly orb. My desire to be a good person causes me to want to do something, so I grab with each hand as many strings as I can hold at once, but they all slip out. Some take skin with them. I decide to attack the situation, my life, more logically. I choose a string, snag it, and immediately I'm distracted by 3 others, so I let go, forget why the first knot I attempted to untangle was even important to me in the first place. I can't live like this. Each time I find myself doing something unimportant to me, I get a little bit sicker and the ball spins faster. It pulses and grows and I reach for it, numb, like I have no control over anything. I think about enlisting help, a professional life untangler, or an anonymous group with similar struggles, but I don't. Like everything else, I haven't the foggiest where to begin, and I'm not sure I'd follow through if I did. I've made plans, I've drawn out a schedule, I've written goals dozens of times. I don't believe in any of them. My insides won't buy into the dreams of a deviant. It's a messy sickness, and this time I don't think it can be blamed on a job I fucking hate, or shitty weather, or a hectic schedule with constantly building responsibilities. It can't be blamed on lack of money, or libido, or the situation of the world's people. I think this time, the fault lies strictly with me, and I'm stumped. Thank you.
My name is Andrea Athey. I also haven't ever thought of myself as a poet, although I have wanted to think of myself as a writer. But we do a thing down here Wednesday night, spoken word, and I started writing things for that, so I brought a few of them to read to you all. This one is called Soliloquy from Mike. Uncustomarily, on a Monday night, but early, the phone rang. It sang out and buzzed in that urgent way that cell phones have. Hello? Hello, you said. Hello? Hello, you said. Who's this? It's your brother. And indeed, I could hear and then see the smile in your voice. In a single shining second, the softened R in brother, like we say in Oklahoma, your crinkled eyes and nose sounding in your well-loved voice, reached out and found me. And in my hopeful heart, a gasp of disbelief and joy silent in my throat. We both said, and then I said, I don't have a brother. And fumblingly, we both apologized, then disconnected. Strange, unbidden tears filled but did not overflow my eyes. I considered for a few moments a willful descent into sorrow. Perhaps I should go ahead and cry. But that second of hope and happiness in your return prevented my grief from rising. I pushed those easy tears back down, like so many small bills, into a small safe, as if I were hoarding something precious, like a miter hoards gold. Phone call from a dead person. Okay, and this last one I think is one of my favorites. This was just a moment of grace in my life recently that I felt moved to write about. Against the silver twilight of an early winter sky, my dooryard becomes a garden of looming black chrysanthemums. Many hundreds of night dark wings flutter like disheveled petals in a fierce and constant wind. I am in the midst of crows. They call and fuss and laugh in a continuous motion of flapping feathers, making the sound of the rapid turning of pages in a giant book. rising and falling, attempting to settle on 1,000 perches in the naked walnut trees. I stand quietly beneath them, thinking Hitchcock thoughts, imagining a synchronized blitz of droppings on my hair and coat. Still, as I linger in their midst, I feel wonder and delight that such chaotic beauty, such life, has gifted the night all around me. I raise my hands and clap them together and cry, "Ho!" And as one creature they burst into the silver sky and make a frenzied migration to the trees next door, leaving me to feel like the sorcerer's apprentice.
Hey! I'll read a few by Joe Michaud. Well, all these years he's been practicing different spiritual disciplines, starting off with transcendental meditation, if you can believe that. And he was first of all into this transcendental meditation, and he was even one of the TM hustlers, you know, the teachers. And he'd go around and introduce people to that form of meditation. But after so many years, he got fed up with it, and he jumped over into Zen and Buddhism, and also into Indian religion, Hinduism, and so forth and so on. So this book is a collection of the last 20 or 30 years of his religious poems. Okay, here's one that and I'm supposed to write a review of this book, see, so we can sell some nationwide. So I've been reading it for the second time in order to crank up my mind to write this review. So here's one I liked. One drunk, one sober. Shitty has it that the wine of wisdom makes men sober. Rumi sings that the wine of love makes men drunk forever. One drunk, one sober. Shitty and Rumi, brothers in the spirit. You know who Shitty was? He was Han Shan's pal when Han Shan lived on Cold Mountain. Shitty had something to do with this monastery of monks near Cold Mountain, see. So sometimes when Han Shan would come down from Cold Mountain to go see Shitty, Shitty would collect up some of the wasted food from the supper at the monastery, see, and he'd put it in a little sack and give it to Han Shan, so Han Shan would have something to eat. So you know, of course, his name is spelled in Chinese SHIH-TE, but of course when we hear it, we think of another thing different than that, and of course to us it's sort of funny to have that name. But if you read some of those translations of Han Shan and his Cold Mountain poems, there'll be little footnotes or comments on Shitty all the way through. You know, Shitty has done this, he's done that, he's given him some food, somebody questioned them about this or that, they both had a good laugh about all the absurd questions they asked him. I think one time some famous guy, emperor or ruler, heard there were two sages living on Cold Mountain, and one of them was named Shitty, and the other one he didn't even know the name. So he came to see these two sages, Han Shan and Shitty, and they just laughed. They couldn't believe that anyone regarded them as sages. See? But this guy took what they said, whatever it was, seriously, and thought, oh yeah, I'll find out the words of these two great sages, and then maybe I'll reach enlightenment. Oh, okay. This is Wu Wei number 2. Wu Wei is supposed to be a concept in Zen whereby instead of learning things from struggle and work and doing all these hard things, you learn things from relaxing and accepting and just taking it easy, and you see that there's some kind of wisdom in that, and that's called Wu Wei. And my old pal from St. Louis, who's now been dead 20 years, he used to always talk about Wu Wei, and you'd think, what a bunch of bullshit, all his Wu Wei talk, you know. But apparently, these Zen people take it seriously, and finally, when you understand it a little better, you take it a little seriously too. Wu Wei 2. Don't yearn for pleasure, but if pleasure comes, enjoy it. Don't run from conflict, and when it arrives, bend like the willow. Neither anticipating nor resisting change, just maintain simple innocence. That is the way of the wise. The drowning swimmer struggles and is pulled under. The surfer rides the waves, exhilarated and buoyant. It is simply a matter of knowing nature's ways. Let the winds of change blow through your life unimpeded. Well, that's kind of hard to do, isn't it? Right? Here's one called Senzen, and that's a personal talk or interview between the teacher and the student. I say no. He says yes. I say yes. He says no. The 10 directions are blocked. The 3 worlds collapse to a point. In the void, stones float past. Outside Roshi's window, a tree dances in the karmic wind. Here's one I could identify with because it said, the title is The Mind of Not Knowing. So much of our life, can we say that we know anything? No, at least not much. So we're constantly, except for a few strange moments, in the mind of not knowing. So these Zen people have addressed this, and this is Joe's poem on it. The mind of not knowing. The mind finds it difficult to trust what cannot be seen, to have faith in what cannot be known. The intellect fears the silence, doubts that lessons can be learned without words and concepts, that something can issue from nothing. Inevitably, the mind is confounded. Ultimately, it must offer its insecurities on the altar of trust, or it will not pass this point. Master Swing-san calls it don't know mind, the mind that surrenders its grasping at the threshold of the mystery. So I actually had a weird experience a few days ago. I was trying to figure things out, and I thought, I know. Just at the point where you think you understand something, the meaning of it slips away. And so you're constantly making the struggle to understand things, and just at the moment you're going to apprehend something, it slips away, this meaning. And so the slipping away of the meaning at that last moment seemed to be what I was understanding. And then I stopped thinking I stopped using words, and it seemed like I understood something in a different way, in a totally intuitive way, and I thought maybe that's it. So like the old Taoists would say, whatever you say the Tao is, no, that's not it. And this one reminds me of my old friend. You know, and Joe says he first became interested in Zen by reading Paul Repp's book, Zen Flesh, Zen Bones. So I remember that old book from the 60s and the 50s, see? And it had a bunch of koan stories, all sort of goofy and absurd and halfway funny. And this story was in that book, and it was called A Cup of Tea. So, Nanin's Cup of Tea. I would like to have been a fly on the wall the day Nanin received an important academic guest. He was a mine of information, well versed in the scriptures, but his mind was clouded by opinions and false conclusions. In silence, Nanin poured a cup of tea. The cup filled and overflowed. The scholar could not account for the abbot's clumsiness. Just like this cup, your mind is crammed with information. If the container is already full, where will the wisdom find its home? Empty your mind as you empty this cup. The cup's utility lies in its emptiness. So you know, my old friend would have a big laugh thinking of that. Nanin keeps on pouring the tea, and of course the tea falls into the saucer and then falls from the saucer onto the table, and Nanin keeps on pouring. You know, well, your mind is full, just like this cup of tea. So my old friend thought that was the cat's meow, you know. Oh, here's a great title. Is That So? Is that so? Two of the great gifts of Buddhism are compassion and equanimity. The monk Hakuin displayed both qualities humbly yet magnificently. When accused of fathering a child on a daughter of the village he lived in, he replied, "Is that so?" and simply accepted his new role. He made a good mother. The child was well fed, well cared for, and well loved. Time passed. A full year later, and equally full of shame, the girl confessed it was the son of the fishmonger she had surrendered her virtue to. Mortified, the girl's parents apologized profusely as they collected their grandchild. "Is that so?" commented Hakuin. So you can see, Joe gets his stuff from all through these Zen Buddhist stories and texts, experiences, and the poems are so clear, you know, to me at least, compared with a lot of poems where you have to peer at them and wonder what the hell they mean. The last one by Joe. Zen Enigma. Ikkyu was a terrible model for a Zen master, drinking sake by day, consorting with easy women. In the pleasure district by night. Even as an old man, he scattered his seed with abandon. But ever since that dawn when the crow flying above him shattered the silence of his samadhi, he could open to his students with a word or a look the path before, birth, and beyond dying.